Good morning. Thanks for watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. It's Monday, October 6th. John, how are you doing? Nice to see you.
I am tired and so hot, I feel like I'm melting. Thank you for asking, though.
Even at this hour? At this ungodly hour?
Whew, the sun's just coming up. Behind me is the Sea of Cortez. And oh my God, I don't think I've ever been so hot in my life as I've been the last week. And then a tarantula came into the dining room last night during dinner.
So how does that? How do you handle that? I mean, do you kill it? Do you shoo it out with a broom? What do you do?
All the women shouted for nobody to kill it. So a couple of guys got up and they picked it up with a dustpan and put it back in the desert where it belongs.
That is my ex-wife. Taiwanese, she told me about growing up in a little house with a dirt floor. Taiwan had an incredible population of poisonous snakes at the time. By some accounts, highest density of poisonous snakes in the world. They had, including the two-step, so named because you took 2 steps and then you're finished. Anyway, she said they'd come in during tsunamis, and they not tsunamis during what's that?
Earthquakes.
No, like the hurricane, but they like
typhoon.
During the typhoons, that's it. I knew it started with a T. Anyway, they'd come in during the typhoons because it's raining constantly, and they're trying to get some shelter to not drown. And they come into the house, and she remembered her grandmother, who was born under Japanese occupation, just sweeping them out of the house with her broom. Like, be gone. So that's how much things have changed, John. When we were kids, all the women would have been like, kill it, kill it.
Right. No, it's the guys that want to kill it.
Anyway. All right. Well, we got a lot to talk about, and we have even a tighter show than usual. So we should just go ahead and get to it. As we predicted here on the program, Sébastian Lecornu, the French Prime Minister, basically lasted about as long as Liz Truss in the UK. Out after 26 days, France in total chaos. We will get into that. There's this contretemps over the National Guard, where Trump tried to federalize the California National Guard in order to send them to Oregon. Currently, the Oregonians didn't want them there, and because the Oregon governor refused to allow the National Guard there to be federalized. So it's all currently in the courts. So the invasion of Portland is off for now. The Gaza deal. Oh my God, John, this is a great. I can't even believe this is probably I think no one saw this coming, including us. And Fiji has a national crisis. HIV cases are running rampant there, and something we need to, even though it's very remote, something we need to keep an eye on. And in the Philippines, a story I'm dying to hear your take on, but basically Duterte loyalists are spreading rumors that the CIA is going to overthrow the government of the Philippines in order to basically try to con people into supporting Duterte again, I guess. And we have joining us a friend of the show, Achilles Larea, is going to tell ordinary Americans, this is about 20 minutes from now, what they can do and how they'll be affected by the government shutdown. So what first?
I want to ask you first about France, because this is something that I just can't wrap my head around. So France has been in this state of chaos for at least a year now.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, foreign policy aside, defense and NATO policy aside, just for the average Frenchman on the street, what does this constant turnover in governments mean? Presumably, French citizens are still taking advantage of government services, but you can't just have a never-ending collapse of government after government after government without there being some sort of weakening of the whole system. How does this work?
Well, I mean, France used to have a very dynamic legislative system. And in fact, they have an annual constitutional amendment convention to amend their constitution. Very different from what we do here, right? So the main takeaway is that nothing gets done. So in the same way that Americans have always complained about their do-nothing Congress, the French legislature just is not getting anything done. There's no laws being passed, right? So literally anything that's a concern can't get done. This major controversy now is about kind of something near and dear to the French heart. What kind of country are we going to be? Are we going to be a country with lots of rights and privileges and a robust social safety net? Or are we going to be a country with austerity that looks more like the United States, with longer working hours and fewer social guarantees? And that's mainly what this is about. It's a clash between the left and the right. Both kind of want to have different versions, but they prefer an older France, the more classic one. And then the centrist moderates, represented by Macron and his allies, they want austerity. They think that that basically it's time to cut back on these programs. They point to the need, in their view, to massively, radically increase the defense budget, because they think that Russia presents this massive threat as embodied by its invasion of Ukraine and its possible threats against Poland. And so they think, and with Trump distancing himself from NATO, they think that they need more money for defense. And so it's two radically kind of incompatible visions of what France ought to be. And it's fascinating because in the French parliament, the snap elections were called, I think it was April of last year. 2/3 of the French parliament is either far left or far right. Then in the middle, they're not even a third. There's less than a third is the centrists, the center right, the Macron people being squeezed, right? Basically, the one thing the left and the right can all agree on is that Macron sucks. And so that's kind of like where things are. Sébastian Lecornu, I mean, we all knew it was madness when Macron, basically just kept trying the same thing over and over again. He's the fourth prime minister in just over a year, and we're going to go for a fifth one. Marine Le Pen, when Marine Le Pen is the reasonable, calm person in the room, you have a problem.
Seriously, right? And I wonder how many people around the world realize that. France has gone crazy. Here in the United States, we complain all the time, like, oh, Trump and Kennedy, and the U.S. has gone crazy. The same thing's happening in France. They're all going crazy there.
Except it's the moderates who have lost their minds.
Yes.
And so Marine Le Pen said, well, the only sensible thing to do here is to call an election. Correct. That's correct. That's how the French system works. You have to call an election. I mean, look, I don't know what Macron was thinking. He called an election, which basically, in the parliamentary system is a vote of confidence. Well, you lost the vote of confidence, right? You didn't get it. So now you're supposed to yield to the people's will. Instead, he's like, I'm blowing that off. I was wrong. The thing that's also baffling is we all knew the way that vote was going to go. And it went just the way the polls said. There was no surprise here, but it's like Macron's living in a fantasy world. And so it's going to be, look, I can't imagine that behind the scenes in Élysée Palace, that the powers that be who really run France, like the CEOs of the big concerns, they're the big entreprise, that they're not calling up Macron and telling him, look, you've had your 4 shots. Okay, stop. Yeah. Look, I can't even believe he's still president. He ought to resign. That's one of his options.
I'm surprised that isn't a part of the public discourse right now, because it seems like that's the only thing that's going to save the French political system. He's got to go.
Yeah, or you can have an election, and he still should go, because if they hold an election and they honor the results, right? The right is united. So if that goes the way like the polls show, then Marine Le Pen should, or her party, I should say, because she's not allowed to run for anything, will have a victory in this election. She'll win a plurality. However, last time the snap election was held in April, it was La France Insoumise. It was the new Popular Front, le Front Populaire Nouveau, which won, right? Which is an alliance of all the left-wing parties. They won, and then second place, not by much, was the Rassemblement Nationale, Marine Le Pen's party. So that's probably what will happen again. I think the New Popular Front, which was an alliance of convenience, will reassemble. Will come back together. They'll reform. They'll get the band back together, and then they should probably win. But it's going to be. It's going to be. The left is going to have to work with the right, And I think they can. I think they have both the left and the right in France are currently both have a populist orientation, and they both have a nationalist domestic agenda orientation. So they can probably set aside their disagreements on social issues and concentrate on the economic and and sort of relational issues. I mean, this is about the definition of what France is, and that's and also this chaos. The French hate it because the French are very ordered people. They're not Italians. It's like these people, they're buttoned up tight, and they think it makes them look bad. They think that everyone knows we're a well-ordered, majestic society, and it's like if we're not doing things properly, we look like shit. I think that's what this is about.
Son of a gun. I thought Greek politics were bad. There was a poll in Greece over the weekend. Greece had its first tax cuts in more than 20 years at the end of last week, and that was supposed to provide a bump for the Conservative Party. There's been no bump, and the reason there's been no bump is, and this is of course unique to Greece, there was a train derailment a year ago in which 57 people, mostly young people, were killed, and there have been no arrests, there have been no firings, and people are ready to overthrow the government because of this. They don't give a shit about any tax cut. They want justice for the victims of this train crash. It's like the same thing. Only the far right is moving up in the polls. The far left is moving up in the polls. The mainstream, center right and center left, nope. It's not working out.
Yeah, that train thing got me thinking about the Epstein files. It's sort of like, right. We're all thinking about the same thing. Address it.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks for the donation from F. Suso. Just wanted to say, this is funny. France in chaos. Dogs are sleeping with cats. Macron is sleeping with a man. No, he's not. Okay, she's definitely a lady. If you spend any time in France, a lot of ladies there look like that. Okay, it's just saying. They're not all. I mean, she's an attractive woman, but she's not my type. But
she's a handsome woman, as my mom used to say.
That's exactly right, John. That's exactly what she is. She must have had something. Macron's an incredibly good-looking dude, and she's a lot younger than her. Of course, she also beats him, so there's that.
Yes, she does.
Which war comes first, Iran or Venezuela? F. Huso wants to know.
I think Iran. For us, we're going to have to manufacture some kind of provocation. For the Israelis, they're ready to bomb Iran at the drop of a hat.
Always.
And I'll tell you, a lot of really very well-informed people are very worried about this. I've interviewed a half a dozen Iran scholars over the last 3 or 4 weeks. They all think it's almost imminent.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
I think it has to be, and we should just talk about Gaza now.
We should,
because it's all related. And I think Iran is the linchpin. It's Bibi's get out of jail free card, literally. So over the weekend, we saw a development that it's absolutely insane. So basically, Hamas dragged their feet, like we said here on the program, that they were going to do. And then they came back and they basically said, in the middle of the news dump on late Friday, early Saturday, okay, we're going to work with that. We have a few little nips and tucks, but thank you, President Trump. We think you're awesome. We love you. We're all for your plan. We love you. Just a few little details to iron out. But you can have all the hostages back. Which, when you think about it, why not? Right? Who cares?
What are they going to do with them?
They've served their purpose up until now. They serve no further purpose, and more of them will just die every time the Israelis keep bombing Gaza City. So they're going to let them go, and then they're like, well, there's the Israelis rightly are saying, well, there's the detail of whether Hamas will still be in charge of the Gaza Strip, and Hamas is like, And Trump goes immediately balls to the wall on Truth Social. Thank you, Hamas. You're awesome. You agreed to total peace in the Middle East. Nobel Committee, get going. and so then now suddenly, who would have seen this coming? I mean, Hamas are the master chess players in all of this from day one, and they have played it correctly. They played Donald Trump, and now Bibi's fucked. because if he says no, which of course he's going to say no, then he's the only human being on the planet who's basically stopping Middle East peace. And then he's even less popular than he is now. And, his domestic Israelis already hate him because he's corrupt and he doesn't care about the hostages.
Yes.
So his only way out is he has to go big against Iran, because then the country has to unify against its commander behind its commander in chief. Oh, the Gaza gets burned, tabled. All eyes on whatever's burning in Iran, right? I mean, isn't that right?
Yes, I think that's exactly right. It's funny because usually it's Netanyahu who outsmarts everybody else on these issues. And this time he got played, and he got played by the likes of Donald Trump and Hamas. I'm pretty entertained by the whole thing.
Oh, me too. It's totally like get out the popcorn. I mean, the thing is, though, this is where we see the rift between Trump and Bibi, right? Obviously, behind the scenes, Bibi's is irritating to Trump as he's been irritating to previous presidents and to, and in general, like on TV. Everyone he must be annoying the shit out of Trump. And at a certain point, this is his way of like Trump painted him into a corner. And now he's like I was going to say no way out, but he has a way out, but it's ugly.
There's a way out. Sure. There's a way out, and that is that Netanyahu has to get with the program. This thing needs to wind down, like now.
But then he goes to prison.
Well, yeah. I mean, he very well could. I believe he should. But yeah.
He deserves it.
He deserves it.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe I still think he should go and he should be allowed to flee into exile. That's the graceful exit here.
Go. I mean,
from the powers that be.
He would have to come to the United States.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Netanyahu, a permanent resident of the United States? Oh my God, he would never keep his mouth shut.
I know, it's true. No, I mean, no, he's got to. Maybe we can send him to Fiji.
Yeah.
Nicholas
what the heck is happening down there?
Oh, well, let's get into that because we have our guests coming in a few minutes. So it's really crazy. So Fiji has a national crisis due to HIV. So basically, it's like unsafe sex, needle sharing, and something called Bluetoothing. So otherwise known as hotspotting. John, I had never heard of this. I don't get out much. This refers to where an IV drug user withdraws their blood after a hit and then injects it into a second person who then does the same thing for a third and so on. So the director of an NGO called Drug Free Fiji has personally watched it. She was walking along on the street in Suva, which is the capital, and saw 7 or 8 people huddling together. I saw the needle with the blood. It was right there in front of me. This young woman, she'd already had the shot. She's taking out the blood, and then you've got other girls, other adults already lining up to be hit with this thing. It's not just needles they're sharing. They are sharing the blood. Bluetoothing is also popular in South Africa and Lesotho. These are countries with the world's highest rates of HIV, and it's become really popular now in Fiji. So there's a drastic, and also the problem is politically, John, there's a right-wing government now in charge of Fiji that got rid of needle exchange programs. And they're trying to, and so they're cracking down instead of treating the problem like as an addiction, they're treating it as a crime. And the West has already been down this road before, but that's exacerbating the issue. So their HIV caseload has increased 11 times over less than the last 10 years. They're also doing meth. So there's going to be 3,000. It's a small country. There's only going to there's going to be 3,000 or more new infections by the end of this year, including last year. There were 14 cases under the age of 15, and then there's massive underreporting according to the UN. So we may start seeing these a resurgence of HIV/AIDS that probably that we didn't expect to ever see again because things due to PrEP and everything else here in the West is well under control. I mean, AIDS is is not a death sentence in the West.
No.
But it is in places in the developing world.
You know, I don't even have words to respond to this. You know, that now tired phrase, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. I mean, this is it right here. You have to live under a rock to not know how HIV is spread, and that in a country like Fiji or Lesotho or South Africa is indeed a death sentence. I have a relative who is HIV positive, and has been for 25 years, and she's the picture of health.
Oh, a lot. I know several people like that too.
Takes it all seriously. Yeah.
If you keep it under control, I mean, it's crazy. There are a lot of people who are HIV positive who have unprotected sex with a married partner, and the married partner never gets it because they have it their viral load so well under control. I mean, one detail of the AIDS crisis here in New York in the 1980s that goes underreported is the fact that it was a lot of gay people, but a lot of those gay people didn't die because of sex. They died because of sharing needles. There was a massive problem with IV drug use in the gay community in the 1980s. It's in clubland, and that's underreported. I mean, IV drug use is, you got to use clean needles if you're going to do that. Don't do it, but if you're going to do it, you have to do that. I mean,
that's right. That is right.
John, question for you from Nicholas Francos. For you, can you give an update about the Rogan podcast? You said it was going to be on October 9th. And he's asking because you're in Mexico right now. So he's like, what's up?
I have a lot of travel coming up. Yeah, I'm gonna fly out day after tomorrow on the 8th and arrive in Austin, overnight there. We do the show on the 9th. I leave the morning of the 10th, and the show is supposed to drop on the 10th. So everything's still just the way it was when we first played.
Everything is A-okay. By the way, it's just a little bit of business. If you're on YouTube and you're looking to donate while we figure out the YouTube donation block, which is probably going to be resolved in a few weeks, you can PayPal us a donation. No pressure, but we really do appreciate it, and we can use it. The PayPal address to send that to is DeProgrampodcast@gmail.com. So we should talk about the Philippines, John. So so basically, Duterte is in court where he belongs.
Scumbag.
And total scumbag. And anyway, so his loyalists are spreading rumors throughout the Filipino military, basically saying that the CIA is planning to overthrow the government. And I guess the idea is that only a strong man like Duterte could stop such a thing. And it's about distraction but it's getting a lot of traction in the Philippines. And I mean, look, obviously you could see why. The Philippines has a long history of U.S. involvement and interference, but there's all these plots against the current president Marcos, and it's just like it's all fiction, but it's it's working. John, you're a little bit frozen there. I hope you can hear me. If you need to reboot, you can reboot. Let's see here. Let's see if there's something else we can talk about while John. Yeah, John, if you can hear me, you should. There you are.
Yeah, sorry. I guarantee you that the OD is, number 1, Russia, Ukraine, number 2, China, number 3, terrorism, Gaza, that kind of thing. The Philippines is not on the list, the operating directives list, because nobody gives a shit. Our relations with the Philippines are quite good. They're very close. Much to everybody's surprise, Bongbong Marcos has turned out to be a perfectly fine president. But the problem is that the CIA has such a long history of overthrowing governments and of interfering in the foreign relations of other countries that these kinds of unfounded rumors can grow legs, and that's what we're seeing here. Listen, the point though is that Duterte is already, I should say, in custody, in the custody of the International Criminal Court. He's not going anywhere, and they're not going to be able to save him. He's going to have to pay for what he did.
Yeah, right. I mean, he's out of their clutches, right? I mean, the Filipino military can do anything they want. I mean, they can take over. They can launch a coup. They can not going to make any difference, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just wondering. I mean, they know that, right?
They know that. They're desperate. That's what this is.
It's super interesting. I just thought it was like more than like, it's not like an actionable story, but it's definitely a story about just the residual effect of over a century of American colonialism in the Philippines, which is right where we got really into waterboarding for the first time, was in the fighting Filipino insurgents. Question for did you see the $55 billion Saudi takeover of Electric Arts, the gaming company? Why would the Saudis be interested in this? I mean, I think it's about the money, John. I think gaming is incredibly profitable and Electronic Arts is incredibly profitable. But do you think there's an intelligence related aspect to this as well? Okay, John, your signal is frozen. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our guest, and John, maybe you can like reboot, and I'm going to bring in Achilles. Okay, Achilles, thank you very much for joining us here on DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou. John's got a few little tech glitches piping in the program from Mexico. As soon as he pops back in, I'll bring him in. Thanks for joining us, Achilles.
Pleasure to be here, Ted. Always a pleasure.
So, John, hopefully your signal is back. So we have Achilles on. I thought, he was in the back.
Hey,
might as well just get to it. So, the government shutdown is now in its fourth or fifth day. It's not going to stop anytime soon. We're going to start to see, obviously some effects, like in terms of parks closing down and government services getting slower. But economically, in terms of how this is going to affect ordinary people, particularly ordinary working Americans, can you tell us a little bit what you see in the days and weeks ahead? And I do think, and John thinks too, we're looking at weeks.
Yeah, I agree with that. We may be looking at a month on this again.
Yeah.
Simply because both sides are so entrenched in their beliefs, in their actions. They're not even talking right now. So let's talk a little bit about what happens to a local economy when this happens. I'm going to take New York as an example. If we just look at the federal sites here in New York, the Statue of Liberty, if you look at Ellis Island, they're both controlled by federal agencies. And a lot of money is made for tourists who come in and they go to these sites. But a lot of money is also made in the local economy. So if you can imagine, you're coming to see the Statue of Liberty. Now you can't go see it. If you're lucky, the boat will pass by a little bit, and you get to the boat stops in front of the pedestal, the footing, and then that's it. It is a chain, what I call a ripple effect, a chain reaction of events. Because when people stop coming here, which may well happen, you don't know, but if they stop coming here, they stop spending. Local businesses suffer, not the big corporations, not the conglomerates of sorts, but the local economy starts to suffer. When the local economy starts to suffer, the ripple continues. Then small businesses have to start laying off workers. When small businesses are laying off workers, then we're seeing an economic slowdown or shutdown of sorts. Now, I'm not predicting that that's going to happen, but the longer this drags on, the more likely it will have an effect. And now, remember, the last time this occurred during the Trump administration, it cost the United States $11 billion or more. I think it was almost $13 billion the last time this happened. So absolutely seeing a ripple effect here. We're going to start seeing it within the next few weeks. The longer that this goes on, the more this gets dragged out, we're definitely going to feel the pain at some point, along with that we're already seeing an economic slowdown. We're seeing higher unemployment. We're seeing inflation starting to creep up. That's why the Fed is doing its cuts right now and being proactive with that. By the way, the Fed has always been right. I mean, they've been wrong, a little slow to the punch.
I was
at
going to say,
times.
not in the early 80s.
Yeah. But I mean, they've been a little slow to the punch sometimes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they're wrong.
Achilles, why are mortgage rates not coming down even though the Fed's cut interest rates?
Yeah, that's interesting, Ted. The reason why that has happened is because the 30-year mortgage is not tied to these overnight rates, which is what the Fed is in control of. All right. The 30-year mortgage is more akin to the 10-year bond rates out there. And those have been moving up and down, but they are not as volatile as, per se, T-bond, that goes out there, or, and they are not correlated with the Fed funds rate as well. So you cannot look at those two. It's kind of like an apple to an orange. You can't look at those two and say to yourself, hey, you should be coming down. As a matter of fact, let's actually step back, Ted. What I would tell you is that, can you imagine if, the Fed starts cutting rates as they did, mortgage rates actually went up.
Mm-hmm.
And the price, this is the one that nobody's talking about, the pricing on homes has gone up as well, because they're
Bizarre.
they're just trying to bump up as much as they can, citing a potential demand in the market. So that's the reason you're not seeing lower rates at this point. Now, is it going to happen? Absolutely going to happen. But you're going to see rates spike up first.
Is there also kind of an anomalous sort of lingering post-COVID work at home effect where people are leaving cities and going out to the suburbs and rural areas as well, that's feeding the housing market?
Well, we're seeing that, but I think it's more to do with a lack of inventory,
Mm-hmm.
in the metropolitan areas. We're seeing a
people are locked into
inventory.
Low interest rates from their previous purchases, and they don't want to move.
Correct. They don't want to sell, and then all of a sudden, they had a 2% mortgage or a 3% mortgage, and now they're facing 7%. That's
Right.
the last thing you want to do.
Yeah,
so that's another reason. Another reason is cost of living. The minute you get out of the cities, the cost of living is going down, although it's changed. And the cost of living is actually starting to go up in the rural areas. So you're not getting that big benefit as you once did. And property taxes in a lot of areas have skyrocketed, double-digit increases. We're seeing in the metropolitan areas, not as much, but definitely if you go, not suburban and rural, are seeing property tax increases of above double-digit percentages on the way up. So that's another thing that's slowing this economy down. So high unemployment, higher inflation, and the worst part about this is there is no easy fix. We might be talking about the R word right now, which is a recession. We might be talking about
we're way overdue, right?
Absolutely. We thought this was going to happen 2 years ago, honestly, but now we're talking about stagflation, right? Where you're having this negative growth along with high unemployment, along with higher inflation. And this is going to create this environment of stagnation where nothing good can come of it. We saw it in Japan in the 80s. We've seen it around the world at times when companies and countries do not react to the environment that's happening around them. We're seeing it being created here by tariffs, by trying to take our economy back 80 years. It's to me, there is no rhyme or reason for this. I think we're just putting ourselves in problems. I think we know better than this. We're a better country than those countries were that hit stagflation. That doesn't mean we haven't gone through it before, but we're a better country than this. And we need to implement policies that make sense, that are not just for the privileged few.
Okay, so give me an example of one or two of those policies.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking about tariffs, who ultimately pays for the tariffs? We do. Don't kid yourself. When the electronics are coming in from abroad, guess what? You're paying a 50% higher price than you did a month ago.
And it's going to drive some businesses out completely, and they're going to lay off their workers.
Correct. So you're creating more unemployment. Now, I also want to caution, remember, we are entering a time, the last quarter of every year, companies do massive layoffs to get the fat off the books. It happens every year. It's like right now, if you look at October, September, October, the market traditionally gets weaker because hedge funds are selling off. Mutual funds are selling off. Large investors are selling off their, they're declaring their gains, declaring their losses, harvesting their losses for the year. So it's making a bad situation worse, in my opinion, doing these tariffs without really any benefit at this time, because it's tied up in the courts. Courts have already said that these tariffs are not legal, and they're waiting for it to go to the Supreme Court. But the courts have already ruled on this. So we have to see what's going to happen next on that front.
Achilles, Frasmataz commenter wants to know, are we looking at a deflationary trap like Japan in the 90s?
I hesitate. Japan was a different story because the Japanese were not flexible in their policies, and just the society had a lot of ingrained inflexibility to respond.
Having worked at a Japanese bank at that time, I can totally validate that. It's part of the culture.
Yeah, it's ingrained in the culture from the get-go. There are some positives, there's some negatives, but absolutely, we're not the same as Japan during that time. We, however, are creating our own mess here by, putting electronics 50% higher, by being in an, we're already seeing that slowdown, and we're creating even more of a slowdown. We need to ask ourselves why. Who benefits from this? Why are we doing this? And what can we do to adapt?
Achilles, what can an ordinary person who is not in a position to set or affect policy do in order to minimize the damage or even thrive?
Yeah, well, personally, you want to take a step back, look at your finances, make sure that any subscriptions that are unnecessary get off the books. You also want to make sure that any discretionary that really doesn't make sense at this point needs to come off the books. Then you need to continue to invest your money in your 401k. If you have some disposable that can go into an IRA to lower your tax consequences and such, albeit if you're 50 and above, you should be doing the catch-up provisions in your IRA and 401k. If you're 55 and older, you should be looking at a Roth 401k. And you can reach out to me. I could talk to you more about that if you're interested in that kind of deal. The last thing I would say is to be strategic, to be smart with your money. Most people do things by default, not by design. If you take care of those two things and you work with a good advisor, you should be able to ride out the storms relatively comfortably.
Achilles, producer Robbie West, you know him well, has a question for you. I'm popping him on. Robbie, go ahead.
No, just
I
a
know
quick
that guy.
question. You do. That's a quick question, boss man. So you mentioned how the tariffs are a bad idea, that someone's profiting from it, but it's not the workers. So what my question to you is, if tariffs are a bad idea, then what can a government do? What, for example, Greece? I mean, they're exporting their younger population because there's no work there. The country is in a demographic winter. Our economy here in the U.S. is collapsing. So if tariffs are not the answer, what can a government do to incentivize companies actually bringing jobs back to this country? Because there hasn't been another answer besides piss off, we don't care about you. Because that's what we're hearing right now. So what's the answer?
Well, there's no simple answer, but what I would say is, can you imagine if companies started implementing programs to retrain workers to adapt their skills to a new modern
Here,
era,
here.
which I don't see happening? Can you imagine you create, quote unquote, a new deal of sorts for these workers the government could implement, where they say, we are going to upgrade your skills to work in the modern era, and you're going to do X amount of work for the government, but we're going to pay you, and we're going to pay you a decent living wage, and set an example to the corporations that unfortunately at times just the wages are stagnant. They're not going up. Can you imagine? I talked to a buddy of mine who works at UPS, and he was telling me back in 1988, he was getting X amount of, salary. He says that the guys right now haven't seen a big raise, per se, that keeps up with the cost of inflation in the better part of 20 plus, 30 plus
Oh
years.
yeah.
So,
Well,
and that's not
our
just
system.
UPS.
I mean, our system doesn't view people as a valuable national resource. It views them as just trash to be exploited.
Yeah, that's been happening quite some time. And, the government needs to lead by example. If we create some sort of new deal that could retrain the workers, get them to work, not make blue collar work a dirty word, because that's something that's happened over the last, I want to say, 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
where being a plumber, being an electrician, a steam fitter, all these different professions are now lacking individuals to work, to apprentice. There was a formal training program, and still is. There was a formal training program to become those that didn't take as long. Didn't take as long as college, that's for sure. And right from the get-go, you would make a ton of money within the first 2 years working in these professions.
How does
So we are
how
seeing
does
that
immigration
loss.
how does immigration depress wages? We see a lot in Western Europe and here in the United States. Is that a valid concern, for blue collar workers? I mean, if you can import them from around the world, why do you need to train your own?
Yeah, the I guess the issue ends up becoming, all right, we start bringing in these workers as we did in the past. Then we say to ourselves, yeah, we don't need to bring anybody in, but it's not a sustainable solution. We need to have a solution that's sustainable over time. Just, I mean, people, if you think about it, H-1 visa persons coming in, yeah, it's, you have some great work ethic, you have some great employees, but then at the end of the day, they go home. And when they go home, they build the capital, the human capital over there in their respective countries. And what are we left with? Oh, we got to find somebody else. That's not a
And
way to
and they
sustain.
often took a job from an American. Achilles, thank you so much for joining us here. We'd love talking to you, but we have a lot more we have to get to. But we'll talk to you again soon. Achilles Larrea is the CEO and co-founder of Larrea Wealth Management here in New York City, and always a pleasure to talk to you. So talk to you soon, and hopefully the ride won't get too bumpy too soon. Thanks, Achilles.
Thank you.
Okay, so John, hopefully your signal is a little more stable now.
Yeah,
We have
sorry about that.
Yeah, it's whatever. What are you going to do here? We were talking. There's a question from Nick about the $55 billion Saudi investment in electronic arts. Why would the Saudis be interested in gaming, besides the fact that it's an insanely lucrative, growing industry?
I think that's the whole reason. I think that this takeover, if that's really what it is, or enormous investment, is because EA has long been wildly profitable. I invested in EA, I'm going to say 20 years ago, and made a little bit of money. I think that gaming is such a big deal now, and it's mostly a cash cow, that that's what they were interested in. That's why they moved into it. It's a good investment.
Oh,
it
yeah,
really
no,
is.
For sure. Just a reminder, by the way, please watch us on Rumble, and please like, follow, and share the show. You're watching DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou, and we are these days around Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. And just a reminder, we may be sticking to some sort of a morning schedule going forward. We had been thinking about going back to the afternoon, but it looks like the morning's popular. But if you have thoughts about that, feel free to email us, or at the same address as our PayPal. You can email us at deprogrampodcast@gmail.com. Okay, quick ad here, and we'll continue the discussion. Hey, football fanatics, are you ready for some primetime NFL action? Tune in to Westwood One for all the gridiron glory you crave, from jaw-dropping touchdowns to game-changing plays. Don't miss a moment of the excitement. Catch every snap, every tackle, and every victory on Westwood One. You can listen to the NFL on the NFL app, on the Westwood One Sports app, on westwood1sports.com, via Westwood One station streams, or by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports. If it's the NFL, it's on Westwood One. Okay, few other questions to get to. What would? Oh, well, that was for Achilles. John. This question came up in my interview about you, which, by the way, is a Rumble Premium 5-part episode. If you want to know all about John's fascinating life, and it really is fascinating, we did a 5-hour, 5-part, 1 hour each interview where I interviewed him about his life in pretty much chronological order. And this episode came up. If so, subscribe to Rumble Premium if you haven't already. But you mentioned that your first wife didn't know that you worked for the CIA and divorced you when you returned to the U.S. from Athens. When did she learn your real job, and how did she react? Oh, John's. Okay. John, did you hear all that? No.
No.
Okay. Okay. So the question was, you got your first wife didn't know you worked for the CIA. She divorced you when you returned to the U.S. from Athens. When did she learn about your real job, and how did she react?
Oh, she knew I worked for the CIA, but that was literally the extent of her knowledge. She never learned what I did for the CIA until my book came out, which is also when she stopped speaking to me, which is a day that I celebrate. But no, seriously though, she never knew what I did for the CIA on a day-to-day basis. Never knew it.
Okay, so that's that. Oh, and by the way, just a little other business. John's interview with me, 4-part series, because my life is 80% as interesting as John's.
Your life is very interesting.
The first hour drops today, according to producer Robbie West. Thank you very much, Robbie, for that info. So that's also a Rumble Premium thing. Let's see, 9 minutes left to go. All right, we got to talk about this National Guard situation, which I think is becoming increasingly worrisome. So basically, we all know that Trump's been sending the National Guard to places like Washington, D.C. and Chicago, where someone's already managed to get killed. And now he's drawn a bead on Portland, Oregon. He asked the governor of Oregon, Tina Kotek, to federalize the National Guard and to authorize the state National Guard to go to Portland. She says, listen, there's no problem here that the police can't handle, and we don't need or want them. Portland, obviously, is famously a very democratic, very liberal city, very progressive. And so obviously this would be very incendiary if it were to happen. So as a workaround, the Trump administration reached out to the California National Guard, and which it's already federalized, and said, over the objection of that state's governor, Gavin Newsom, we will send the California National Guard to Oregon. John, I've never heard of such a thing. And
No.
And now a federal judge has blocked that move, but it's only a stay, which means that there's going to be hearings about this. It's going to work itself out in court. But this is a grasping, sweeping attempt to change the relationship between the federal government and the state National Guards.
When it comes right down to it, and I hope I'm not overstating it, what we're seeing is state militias invading other states at the behest of the president. I think I've told you I went to visit a friend in New Jersey a few weeks ago, and his parents were there when I went to visit, and they said, "You must be so glad to get out of Washington." And I said, it's always nice to get out of Washington for a couple of days. No, we mean with the crime situation. And I said, there's really not much in the way of violent crime in Washington, certainly not in the areas where, we would be. And they looked at each other like, well, what about what the National Guard was sent to take care of? And I said, that's a red herring. There's no violent crime in Washington. There's like drug dealer on drug dealer crime, sure. But there's no crime in Washington. Well, we're seeing the same thing in Portland. We're seeing the same thing in Chicago. These National Guardsmen are not going to go to, Cabrini Green or whatever Cabrini Green is now that it's been torn down, and bring law and order. This is all for show. It's all so Donald Trump can feel like he stuck it to the libs. He made the libs cry and all this other nonsense. But something you said, Ted, that's very important. People are dying now, right? A woman was shot in Chicago. It could be worse in Portland, which Trump last week called a hellscape at war with itself. It's like, no, it's not. You're just making this shit up. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Even in Congress, nobody's saying anything. Like, we need to go liberate the hellscape that is Portland, Oregon. People are dying because of it.
Yeah, the thing is, though, if this works, the problem is that not only will Trump have sweeping powers that the Constitution never intended for him to have, and not only is there a strong possibility that he'll abuse those powers, but those powers will rest in the executive branch forever, right? Basically, once the executive seizes power, it just keeps expanding power, as we've seen really since Thomas Jefferson and the Barbary Wars. They just keep going and going and going. Hey, Clovis, what are you doing here?
Clovis.
So. It's this reminds me a little bit of the war over the city of the Toledo Strip, right? When the Ohio and the Michigan militias went to war with each other in 1835.
Yes. And
the Michigonians the Michigan militia fired at the Ohio militia over this border dispute. If you ever look at that border between Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana, that should be a straight line. And the reason that it's not is because of this border dispute.
Fought over it. Yep. It's true.
It's very, very serious. Ohio also has Ohio was an aggressive state, though. Ohio had a border dispute over the Ohio River with Kentucky. It claimed that, because it was called the Ohio River, that it owned the Ohio River all the way to the shores of Kentucky. And the Kentuckians are like, fuck off. But it never came to blows there.
Do you think that we're going to get to a point where we see National Guardsmen refusing to be deployed?
God, hell, we've seen more of that in Israel with refuseniks in the IDF. And by the way, God bless them and thank.
That's a very brave and very risky thing to do.
And noble.
And before we run out of time, there was a great article, I think it was in the Washington Post over the weekend, may have been the Times. I think it was the Post, about suicides among IDF soldiers.
Yeah.
It's triple
off the charts.
Off the charts.
I don't think we'll see that I don't think that tradition exists here. And I think the kind of people who join the National Guard, I hate to say this, for the most part, yeah, some really just want to, they want to save people from floods and stuff. And they're just good people who want to help. But I think for many people, it's just a job. It's like, this is a job that has some benefits, and maybe I can get some training and become a cop later or something like that. I don't think, I could be mistaken. I've never served with those people, but I don't think we're going to see that. There isn't really we didn't see those kinds of resignations after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. We should have.
No. Yeah, we should have. Yeah.
So it's very, very disturbing. And I guess So I guess before we go, let's handicap the situation in France. I think this is going to get worse before it gets better. No doubt. The right move is Macron should resign, but he
got to
won't.
resign.
But he won't. Yeah,
no, he won't resign.
He can't govern.
It's going to devolve further.
It's kind of like the national. It's crazy. It's like our mayor here in New York. He can't even run for. He can't get his own party's nomination. He can't run for re-election. He's at 8% in the polls, but he's still the mayor. Why hasn't he quit?
Yeah. Nobody wants him.
No sense of shame anymore.
No sense of shame. Absolutely.
John, always a pleasure. Hope you have a good day filming out there on the Mosquito Coast.
Oh my God, it's hot. Yeah.
And anyway, we will be back here on DeProgram with Ted Rall and John Kiriakou tomorrow, Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll be bringing you the latest on all the news from around the world and everything else we feel like talking about and everything else that you feel like talking about. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you later. Bye, John.
Bye-bye.